My name is Holly Joseph and I'm an Associate Professor in Language Education and Literacy Development at the Institute of Education, University of Reading, and I'm also Co-Director of Bilingualism Matters. So my research is about reading and particularly with children and children who have reading difficulties, and I came across children who speak English as an additional language since coming here to Reading and seeing that there are many people interested in this group of children, with this growing group of children. And my research uses eye movements to try and capture the processes that underlie reading comprehension. So when we read, our eyes move in a series of jumps known as saccades and pauses known as fixations, and during these pauses we as readers are able to extract the information that we need in order to start understanding the meaning of the word that we're fixating. And we know from many studies now that longer fixations indicate greater difficulty of processing, and so based on this we can design different kinds of texts that we think will be easy or difficult, and look at how long children read these words or these phrases, and then make inferences about what that means in terms of their processing. So this is the kind of research I've been doing with EAL children, and two projects that I've been involved in recently have been looking first of all at kind of high-level reading comprehension, so looking at inference making. So if a child reads a story about Mr. Jones who looks up at the dark grey clouds and gets his umbrella out, the inference is he's doing that because it's going to rain. And so we look at reading times in children when they read these kind of clue words like dark grey clouds and umbrella, and we see if they spend longer reading those words when they haven't been explicitly told that it's going to rain. So I'm still analysing the data for EAL children in that study, so I don't have any results yet, but the prediction is that EAL children will find those passages harder to understand. And then the other study that I've been working on is looking at how children learn new words that they encounter during reading. So we know that most children learn most of the new words that they learn through the process of reading from about age 9 onwards. And so what I was interested in looking at was what children actually do when they get to these words that they've never seen before. So we had sentences that contained these very rare words that we knew that children wouldn't know, so words like confabulated, and we looked at what they did in terms of their eye movements when they first saw one of these words, and then on the subsequent occasion that they saw this word and the subsequent one, and again over 10 different exposures to these words. And interestingly, what we found was that children who speak English as an additional language reduce their reading time with each encounter to a much greater extent than monolingual children. So this was really interesting because we know that EAL children have poorer vocabularies than monolingual English children in English in general terms, but our research seemed to suggest that they were better at learning the meaning of those new words quite quickly as compared to monolingual children. And this isn't what we see. If you take two groups of monolingual children who, one group who has good vocabulary knowledge and one group that has poorer vocabulary knowledge, you wouldn't see that. You would see that the children with poorer vocabulary knowledge need many more exposures to those words in order to learn them. So EAL children may have equivalent vocabulary knowledge as these monolingual children with poor vocabulary, but what we see with them is that they reduce their reading times really quickly and learn these new word meanings really well. So that's a really kind of positive story about EAL learners. But I think what this possibly suggests is that if you're a teacher with lots of EAL children in your class who don't have as much vocabulary knowledge as the English only speaking children, you might be a little bit wary of saying to those children, just go away and read loads of books, because we know that if you generally have poor vocabulary knowledge, that's not necessarily good advice, because children with poor vocabulary knowledge often need much more explicit kind of vocabulary teaching. But I think what my research suggests is that for EAL children, this might actually be quite good advice, because it appears that just through reading and incidentally encountering these words that they didn't know before, EAL children seem to be really pretty good at learning those new words. So I guess, although you don't want to make strong recommendations based on just a study or two, I think our findings suggest that asking EAL children to read in English in their own time for pleasure, finding them really great books that they really like, that are challenging yet easy for them to understand, with some really interesting vocabulary in. I think that seems to be good advice for this group of children. Part of what I like about this study is that it gives a very positive message of bilingualism, because a lot of, if you read tabloid newspapers, and a lot of the narrative that we see at the moment in this country is quite negative about EAL children, that they're taking up teachers' time, that they're kind of a burden on our education system. And actually a lot of research, not just my research, shows that to be patently false. And actually these children contribute hugely, do really well. I mean, they of course they aren't in line with their monolingual peers early on. I mean, of course they're not, just as the monolingual children in this country wouldn't be if they went to Syria or wherever. So I think there's a lot of kind of negative, a very negative narrative about this group of children, and I think that my research and research of others shows that that is not based on evidence.